scientists created a third thumb, humans with extra limbs. What if I told you that scientists did not wait for evolution to grow humans a sixth finger? They just built one. Not in a secret volcano lair, not in a comic book lab with lightning in the background, not with gamma rays, cursed meteors, or billionaire nonsense. A real team of researchers worked with a real designer to create a wearable robotic extra thumb called the third thumb, a 3D printed thumb worn beside the hand, controlled by pressure sensors under the user's big toes. In studies, people learned to use it surprisingly quickly, even for dexterous tasks, and some began reporting that it felt like part of their body. And that is where this story stops being cool gadget news and starts becoming a story about the most dangerous, upgradable hardware on Earth: you. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to one of the strangest chapters in modern science. The moment researchers looked at the human hand, one of evolution's all-time greatest hits, and said, "You know what this needs? Downloadable DLC." Because that is what the third thumb really is. Not a replacement, not a prosthetic in the old sense, not a bandage for missing function. An addition. An unauthorized sequel to the human body. And once you understand what that means, you begin to see the rabbit hole. If a brain can learn an extra thumb, could it learn an extra arm, an extra tool, an extra body map, an extra self? That sounds like science fiction. Unfortunately for our sense of normal, science is starting to catch up. The invention. A thumb where no thumb should be. The third thumb was developed by designer Dani Clode, initially as a graduate design project, and later studied with neuroscientists at University College London under Professor Tamar Makin's team. The device is 3D printed, worn on the side of the hand opposite the natural thumb, and controlled wirelessly using pressure sensors under the user's big toes. Think about that for a second. Your feet are driving your extra thumb. This means your body is doing something gloriously absurd. Your toes are moonlighting as hand software. Somewhere in your nervous system, a meeting is happening. Your hand says, "Who approved this?" Your toes say, "We've been promoted." And your brain, because it is both brilliant and slightly reckless, says, "Fine, we ball." That is the first big twist in this story. The device does not need to be controlled in some perfectly natural way to become useful. Humans can learn weird control mappings. Give the brain a goal, enough repetition and feedback, and it starts building order out of nonsense. That is not a side detail. That's the whole revolution. Because it suggests the human body is less like a finished statue and more like a platform. People actually learn to use it. Now here's the part that should make you sit up straighter. In the 2021 Science Robotics study, participants trained with the third thumb over 5 days, wore it for roughly 2 to 6 hours per day, and were able to perform dexterous tasks such as carrying multiple objects with one hand, building block towers, and even using the thumb while distracted or blindfolded. A control group used a static version for comparison. Let me translate that into plain English. Humans were handed a bonus body part and said, "Give me a weekend." And the brain said, "Honestly, that might do it." Even more striking, a later 2024 usability study reported that 98% of participants could successfully manipulate objects with the extra thumb within the first minute of use across a broad and diverse sample. Within the first minute. That's outrageous. You and I can spend 45 minutes trying to understand a new TV remote, but apparently the nervous system sees an extra robotic digit and goes, "Yeah, I think I know what this is for." That does not mean mastery was instant. It means the entry barrier was shockingly low, and that matters because every futuristic technology lives or dies on one brutal question. Can ordinary people actually use it? This one passed that test far better than many expected. The real miracle was not the thumb, it was the brain. Now we descend, because the gadget is flashy, but the real star of this story is the organ inside your skull that never got a user manual. Before and after training, researchers scanned participants' brains using fMRI while they moved their fingers individually. They found subtle but significant changes in the sensory motor cortex, the brain area involved in representing the hand. Specifically, the pattern for individual fingers in the augmented hand became less distinct from each other after training, suggesting the brain had reorganized how it represented that hand. Pause there. That's not just people used a robot. That's the brain edited its map of the body. The old hand blueprint got revised. It's as if the brain looked down at the standard 5-digit package and said, "We are going to need a patch." Some participants also reported increasing embodiment, that the thumb started to feel like part of their own body, not just a tool strapped to it. The brain changes seen in the 2021 study appeared to subside when some participants were rescanned about a week later, suggesting the remapping may not have been permanent after short-term use. That detail is important. We shouldn't oversell this as humans permanently became six-fingered. That's not what the evidence shows. What it does show is arguably more fascinating. Your brain's sense of what counts as me is negotiable. Not infinitely, not magically, but far more than common sense would suggest. And that should unsettle you a little, because most people walk around assuming the body is fixed and the self is obvious. This research whispers something else. Your self-model is editable. Evolution didn't prepare us, and yet, Professor Tamar Macon put it plainly, evolution hasn't prepared us to use an extra body part, so if our abilities are extended in new ways, the brain will need to adapt the representation of the biological body. That's exactly what the study set out to probe. That quote lands like thunder, because for most of human history, the body was treated like destiny. You got what nature gave you. Maybe you trained it, maybe you healed it, maybe you ornamented it, but you did not append to it. Now, we're entering an age where biology may be the starting kit, not the final form. And the broader movement augmentation literature says this is not just a novelty stunt. Researchers describe human movement augmentation as a field that could expand medical, industrial, and everyday capabilities by giving people supernumerary effectors, extra fingers, arms, or other controllable devices. Translation: today it's a thumb. Tomorrow, it could be an extra arm for surgery, an extra manipulator for factory work, an assistive limb for someone with one functional hand, or specialized tools in environments where ordinary anatomy is a bottleneck. The hand may be getting a sequel. The human job description may be too. This is not just about robots. It's about human plasticity. Here is where many people miss the story. The headline sounds like robotics, but the deeper headline is plasticity. Humans are not powerful merely because we are strong. We are powerful because we are adaptable. We take external objects and, through repetition, begin to treat them as extensions of ourselves. A hammer becomes longer fist. A car becomes faster legs. A phone becomes outsourced memory. A camera becomes borrowed eyes, and now, apparently, a robotic thumb can become bonus hand. The 2022 Nature Communications Review on Human Movement Augmentation frames this as a serious emerging field.
The goal is to extend a person's movement abilities, sometimes by adding extra degrees of freedom that make previously impossible actions achievable. That phrase, extra degrees of freedom, sounds technical, but it's beautiful. It means more ways to act in the world, more ways to grip, more ways to coordinate, more ways to solve problems. And if history has taught us anything, it's that whenever humans discover more ways to act, civilization changes. Fire changed us, language changed us, writing changed us, machines changed us, computers changed us. So ask yourself, what happens when the machine does not merely sit in your hand, but becomes something your brain begins to count as part of your body? That's a different category of invention. That's not a tool. That's a merger. The great rabbit hole. Where does the body end? Now let's go deeper, but keep the flashlight on. The third thumb raises one of the oldest questions in neuroscience and philosophy. Where does the body end?
Is your body only flesh, or is the body really whatever your brain can reliably control, sense, and integrate? Because if embodiment can expand, then human form becomes less about anatomy and more about successful control loops. That sounds abstract, so let me make it concrete. If you can control something, coordinate it with the rest of your body, predict what it will do, and feel even partially that it belongs in your action system, your nervous system may start filing it under mine. That is profound. Because now the frontier of human evolution is no longer just genes over millennia. It may also be interfaces over years. Not Darwin alone, design too. Not mutation only, iteration. Not what did nature give us, but what can the brain absorb? And before anyone says, so we're all becoming cyborg octopuses? No, probably not. Although let's be honest, if humans ever get 8 controllable arms, someone will absolutely use 4 of them just to carry groceries and 2 for scrolling. The limits, the caution, the reality check. Now let us stay disciplined. This is where bad storytelling becomes clickbait and good storytelling earns trust. The third thumb research does not prove humans are ready to casually bolt on endless extra limbs and become flawless multitasking super beings. The evidence shows short-term learning, promising usability, measurable brain adaptation, and a growing sense of embodiment in controlled research settings. The broader literature also emphasizes real challenges: control signals, sensory feedback, learning demands, safety, and the question of whether extra degrees of freedom can be added without interfering with natural movement. In other words, the future is open, but it is not frictionless. An extra limb is not just a hardware problem. It is a bandwidth problem, a training problem, a feedback problem, and maybe most of all, a brain budget problem. Your nervous system is brilliant, but it is not infinite. Researchers in the field explicitly frame a key open question as whether people can control additional degrees of freedom independently and concurrently without degrading natural movement. That is the real scientific tension. Not, can we make robot limbs? We already can. The deeper question is, can a biological brain absorb them gracefully? The third thumb suggests more than we thought, but not without cost, not without adaptation, and not without redesigning what natural even means. The bigger human story. And now the final turn. The third thumb is funny, it is weird, it is wonderfully awkward. It looks like the kind of thing a time traveler would forget in a coffee shop. But beneath the strangeness is a very old human pattern. We are a species that refuses to stay inside its original constraints. No wings, we fly. No claws, we build tools. No night vision, we make light. No extra limb, we print one. That is our signature. The body says, this is what you are.
Human imagination says, we'll see. And maybe that's why this story hits so hard, because it is not merely about robotics, it is about identity. Are humans defined by the body we inherited, or by the abilities we learned to inhabit? The third thumb doesn't answer that question completely, but it does tap the microphone and say, ladies and gentlemen, the border is thinner than you thought. So the next time someone tells you the human body is fixed, remember this. A group of scientists and designers built an extra thumb. People learned to use it. Some started to feel it as part of themselves, and their brains changed to make room for the impossible. That's not just a tech story, that's a warning shot from the future. Because once humans learn they can negotiate with their own anatomy, they won't stop at thumbs. They never do. If you want more stories where science sounds fake but is absolutely real, subscribe now. And in the comments, tell me this. If you could add one extra body function, just one, what would it be? A third arm? Infrared vision? Perfect memory? Or are you keeping the stock model because humanity is already chaotic enough? And remember, the strangest thing about the future is not the machines we build. It is how quickly we start calling them us.